Go, go, Sabby Ranger. Now I got that stuck in my head. Yes, Rock Band is doing its thing. Let us begin.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some poor hungry people in the mud for big powerful America and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger. They never lynched me. They never put no dogs on me. They never robbed me of my nationality, raped and killed my mother and father. Well, I'm going to shoot them for what? How can I go shoot them? Them little poor little black people, little babies and children and women. How can I shoot them poor people? I would just take me to jail.
Ali more than held his own against students who had a far better formal education than he.
I'm saying you talking about me about some draft, and all of you white boys are breaking your neck to get to Switzerland and Canada and London. I'm not going to help nobody get something my Negroes don't have. If I'm going to die, I'll die now, right here fighting you. If I want to die, you my enemy. My enemy is the white people, not Vietnams or Chinese or Japanese. You my opposer when I want freedom. You my opposer when I want justice. You my opposer when I want equality. You won't even stand up for me in America for my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight, but you won't even stand up for me here at home.
Welcome to the Sabby and Jaybe show. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. Good evening, Sabs.
What's going on, Jaybe?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut that part out. I forgot he said the N-word like right at the beginning.
Yeah, you can't use racial
Sorry
slurs.
about that. But just welcome everybody to the Sabby and Jaybe show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. It's a special Juneteenth episode. Good to see all of you here joining us for today. Come on in. It's going to be a great conversation. I cannot wait to have this with you all. Go ahead and do the thing. Go ahead and like the stream. That helps us out, especially to be able to reach more people. So thank you very much for that. Also, please make sure to share and subscribe. That helps us out as well. If you guys have not, you guys can also join our mailing list at revolutionaryblackout.substack.com so that we may be able to let you know whenever we have clips or lives that are going. So you guys have that there as well. And if you guys would like to reach us, you guys can reach us at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com so that you guys can give us any encouraging words, or if you guys have any stories that you guys would like to submit for us to talk about. So thank you so very much for that. Sabs, my sister, how are you doing today? Because it's Juneteenth. I want to check in with my sister. How are you?
Doing good, all things considering. I mean, we're headed towards possibly World War III, but doing good, all things well considered. It's crazy times right now. Crazy times.
Yeah, it is. Okay, first of all, I'm exhausted from the workout today. I'm exhausted from that. I had a great post-workout meal though. It was really good. I have to do that again. Anyways, but yeah, for the most part, I'm doing okay. I am concerned about the world stage and what it can mean for those of us, especially those of us that are marginalized. And we'll be getting into that. But that's one of my biggest concerns that we have right now, especially for those of us where they dangle, they dangle necessities in front of us to try to get us to go abroad. And that's something that I'm worried about, because they keep us in this position just so that we'll grab, we'll try to grab those necessities, but it's like, you got to fight first.
Right.
And so that's the thing that I'm worried about. But while, sorry, go ahead.
I'm worried that they may not have the numbers that they need, and they may try to institute the draft again. That's what I'm worried about, because military recruitment numbers have not been what they used to be, right? Because newer generations are choosing not to join the military. So I'm just worried that we may get to that point as well.
Ooh, yeah, that's another good point. Yeah, we'll talk about it. And guys, people in the chat, let us know what you think, especially in regards to what me and Sabby just talked about, what our worries are. What are some of your concerns too? Please let us know in the chats and in the comments as well below, because this is a conversation we're having. It's not just one-sided. So we're going to go into some of the comments in the chat. We're going to go into, Kevin says, why does the Juneteenth flag like a Taiwan flag reconfigure? Oh my gosh, that's true.
I never thought about that.
Me neither.
Thought about that, Kevin. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, but there's a lot of flags that look like similar. Like the American flag looks similar to some others. I'm blanking on the name. I think it's Philippines, or it's another country. But some flags look very similar. Like, I'm gonna be real with you. Like, the British flag looks very similar to the Confederate flag.
Yeah, it does.
I'm just saying. So, coincidence. Rootsy says, "Yo, JB, much love, my brother. Good to see you, Rootsy. Thank you so very much." We have Kevin coming in saying, "I think this Iran, the Iranian flag that Kevin is sharing, says, how do we get Americans to look in the mirror of Israel?"
Well, first, point them towards independent media. That's part of the problem, because the media controls the source of information, right? So if they're only watching corporate media, they're not going to get that, right? So you got to point them in the direction of independent media.
Yeah. We have John coming in saying, John Blackman says, happy Juneteenth to all. Happy Juneteenth to you. We got Jasmine coming in. Yay, Sabby and Jaybe. Jasmine is a very fragrant flower. How do I know? Because I used to be at dialysis, and there was this jasmine bush right across the street, and every spring it would bloom, and there was a bench outside the dialysis center, and I would just sit like afterwards, and I can actually smell the jasmine whenever the wind.
Wow.
Yeah, it was gorgeous smell, beautiful smell. Let me see. Stoop sign says, "Damn, the thing froze on me. May need to refresh." We have Navid coming in saying, happy Juneteenth to all. Good to see you, Navid. Red 6 says, also remember, Black people are overly represented in the military relative to our population.
We're going to get into that, Red. Thank you for making that point. Yeah.
Yep. Red. I'm going to start that because we're going to come back to that. But Red is on point. Black Ronin says, if they still plan on going to war with China in 2027, the draft will come back next year at the latest. You think so?
I could see them doing it. Remember, they passed the legislation they were trying to pass? I think it did get through, where they were trying to make it so that once you turn 18, you're automatically registered.
Yeah. So it's selective service, which isn't supposed to be the draft, but U.S. selective service, they meant that it is now automatic and digitized, so that you won't have to fill out a form at the post office anymore, like I did, right? You fill out a card at the post office and you send it in because you had to be at least the age of 18. Once you hit 18, you had to sign that. But now it's automatic and it's digitized. So once you turn 18, you're automatically enlisted for United States Selective Service. But the thing is that they just don't use it as a draft because it's supposed to be a voluntary military force. That is until they change it. And so having the selective service makes it easier because it's all males between the ages of 18 to 26.
Right. And we can bring this up as well that some other countries have mandatory service, like South Korea, for example. They have
Mhm.
they have to serve at least 1 year.
Mhm.
So it's just things to think about, guys, as we go into the future.
Yeah. Let's do a couple more. We have Amanda says, I missed the first few minutes, but the title of the thumbnail are awesome. Thanks to Greg. I always worry about Israel in their public, though infrequent statements about African Americans in America so disturbing. Yeah, that's true. We have Jacqueline says, hey, Jabby, Jaybe and Sabby looking snazzy. Hey, everyone. Good to see you. All right. And then we have Negras Tormentas says, heart with fire. Thank you so very much for that. Let's get into what we're going to be talking about today, because this is going to be a very important topic, especially because we are in Juneteenth. And I want to go over, of course, what Juneteenth is, because we got to make sure that we get it right, and how this coincides with sacrificing more of our people, because I think that's an important topic to discuss. So let's get into the thumbnail. Let's get into that. Let's see. So this is what we're discussing, people. Sacrificing Black Lives Juneteenth special. So just like we have many Black Americans, Black people really in the armed services. Look, you have Trump and Netanyahu really that are trying to get us to fight on behalf of supremacy.
Yes.
And this is something that we have to discuss, and something that I hope that we do a good duty of supplicating our people into turning away from being the sacrificial lambs of an empire. So,
yeah,
this is going to be deep. Let's get into what Juneteenth is, because that's the important piece that people need to learn. And so this is from the National African American History Museum. The Smithsonian says, the historical legacy of Juneteenth, right? All right, so there goes some ancestors there. It says, on Freedom's Eve, or the eve of January 1st, 1863, the first watch night service took place. On that night, enslaved and free African Americans gathered in churches and private homes all across the country, awaiting news that the Emancipation Proclamation had taken effect. At the stroke of midnight, prayers were answered as all enslaved people in Confederate states were declared legally free. Union soldiers, many of whom were Black, marched onto plantations and across cities in the South, reading small copies of the Emancipation Proclamation, spreading the news of freedom in Confederate states. Only through the 13th Amendment did emancipation end slavery throughout the United States. Now, I will say this. As for the 13th Amendment, y'all, we all know that it does not completely get rid of slavery. There's an exception for it for those incarcerated, which Black people are overrepresented in comparison to our population. So that's something that they didn't add there. So we got to make sure we fill in the gaps here. Okay. So slavery still exists. It says, but not everyone in Confederate territory would immediately be free. Even though the Emancipation Proclamation was made effective in 1863, it could not be implemented in places still under Confederate control. As a result, in the westernmost Confederate states of Texas, enslaved people would not be free until much later. Freedom finally came on June 19th, 1865, when some 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, Texas. The Army announced that more than 250,000 enslaved Black people in the state were freed by executive decree. This day came to be known as Juneteenth by the newly freed people in Texas. 250,000. people, our ancestors that were enslaved. That's a lot. And that's just in Texas.
And just remember, those are the ones who were still alive at that time. We can't
Yes.
forget that there were many that were killed. So just keep in mind, those are the ones that were still alive at that time.
Yep. Thank you very much for that too. So this is the Emancipation Proclamation with Abraham Lincoln. Says the post-emancipation period, known as Reconstruction from 1865 to 1877. That's only 12 years. Reconstruction was only 12 years long. It says marked the era of a great hope, uncertainty, and struggle for the nation as a whole. Formerly enslaved people immediately sought to reunify families, establish schools, run for political office, push radical legislation, and even sue slaveholders for compensation. Given the 200 plus years of enslavement, such changes were nothing short of amazing. By that time, let's make this clear, by that time, in 1865, slavery has been around for 200 years by the time emancipation happened. I want y'all to realize how long it was. And when Black people, especially Black Americans, say that we have been enslaved longer than we've been free, that's what we mean. Because 1865 was what, 150 years ago?
Yep. And even when people talk about the civil rights movement, people talk about it as though that was a long time ago. We got to remember there were people that were alive during the civil rights movement that are still alive today. It wasn't as long ago as people think.
My apologies, 160 years ago. But still, like 1865 to now is 160 years, but they have been enslaved for 200 years prior to that. So we gotta, make sure we establish how heavy this is, right? Yeah. So it says, not even a generation out of slavery, African Americans were inspired and empowered to transform their lives and their country. Juneteenth marks our country's second Independence Day. Although it has long been celebrated in the African American community, this monumental event remains largely unknown to most Americans. The historical legacy of Juneteenth shows the value of never giving up hope in uncertain times. The National Museum of African American History and Culture is a community space where the spirit of hope lives on, a place where historical events like Juneteenth are shared and news stories with equal urgency are told, even though Donald Trump wants to basically go after it and take funding away from it.
Yep.
I added that last part. So let me ask you, Sabs, have you heard about Juneteenth before it was? Because some Black people, haven't heard about Juneteenth. Like, I didn't hear about Juneteenth until I was in my late 30s.
No, I knew about it. Yeah. I mean, we learned about it in school. But that was when I was at a predominantly all Black school. That was when I went to school in Baltimore. So we learned about Juneteenth when I was a kid.
I may have heard the name back then, but I don't remember learning about it, because when I learned about it, it was like maybe like one lesson and that was it. Right. If I did. But for the most part, like, when you're a kid and you only hear about one lesson, it goes in one ear and out the other, and it's done. Right. Even though I went to predominantly Black schools, my entire elementary, middle, and high school life, I've done nothing but predominantly Black schools.
To be honest with you, if it's not a part of the curriculum, they're less likely to teach it.
Yeah. And I went to school in Florida. So unfortunately, some Black Americans like myself didn't really get to learn about Juneteenth until we were adults. On top of a lot of other things that we weren't taught about in regards to chattel slavery. A lot of us had to do the research as adults because we were never taught it in school. Even though we went to predominantly Black schools, you got to remember who runs the school boards in the state.
That part.
Because curriculum is told by the school boards, right? Curriculum is not passed down through the Department of Education, the Department of Education, federally. It's state Department of Education that the curriculum is decided. So,
yeah. I mean, unless you have one of those teachers that's really like willing to make that a focus. You know what I mean? Like, unless you have one of those teachers that's willing to go there.
Yeah. But even then, some of them may get in trouble, especially these days.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the things we want to talk about is, military service. A lot of our family ancestors were involved in military service. I can say for myself, grandfather, uncle, they were all involved in military service. My grandfather, well, technically he's my step grandfather, but he fought in the Korean War. My uncle, I think, I'm not sure if he actually was in during Desert Storm, but I do know for a fact that he served, but it might have been just a short while in the 80s. And if you go back further and further, with things like the draft and World War I, things like that, I would have to do my research as far as family goes. But a lot of us have family that have fought, back in, the Second World War, things like that.
Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam.
Yeah. But now we're being called to fight war on behalf of imperialism, really. And I'm going to share this with the audience because this is an important piece. Here is somebody who's not American that basically is trying to get us to fight in a supremacist war. This is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to Jonathan Karl of ABC News. Let's hear it.
Are you going to target the supreme leader?
Look, we're doing what we need to do. I'm not going to get into the details, but we've targeted their top nuclear scientists. It's basically Hitler's nuclear team. We got them. We still have work to do on other sites. We have targeted their ballistic missile manufacturing facilities. Understand this. You see these bombs. You saw a single bomb. It's a 1-ton bomb, John, dropping on Tel Aviv and other places, causing killing men, women, and children. They're deliberately targeting our population. We're not doing that. We're targeting their military sites, their nuclear sites, their ballistic missile sites, so they don't have 20,000 of these that no country could survive with. Yeah, they want to continue stringing us along, but there's a limit, because if we don't act now, there won't be a 13th hour. So we have to act. But what I'm saying is that we're not merely protecting ourselves. We're protecting everybody. We're protecting our Arab neighbors with whom we want to expand the peace, as we did under President Trump's leadership in the Abraham Accords. That will be possible if Iran is defanged. We're also protecting the world. They have ballistic missiles that can now reach deep into Europe and soon could reach the United States. And imagine this regime that caused death to America every time, that bombed your American embassies, that murdered 200.
Oh boy.
Sometimes it does that with Twitter video. You may just have to go back a little bit.
Yeah. This rarely happens to me, though.
That murdered 241 Marines in Beirut, that killed and injured thousands of American servicemen in Iraq and Afghanistan, that tried to blow up a restaurant in Washington, that burns the American flag. You want these people to have nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to your cities? Today it's Tel Aviv, tomorrow it's New York. I understand America first. I don't understand America dead. That's what these people want. They chant death to America. So we're doing something that is in the service of mankind, of humanity, and it's a battle of good against evil. America should and does stand with the good. That's what President Trump is doing, and I deeply appreciate his support.
I have so much to say.
Please start.
First of all,
Go off, sis.
Just to respond to a couple of things that he said there. First of all, no, he doesn't understand America first, because America first wouldn't include them. It wouldn't include Israel, right? If we were America first, that doesn't include us giving $3.8 billion a year to Israel. It just does not. A country where everybody has healthcare, a country where they have free college. We don't even have those things here in this country. So no, that's not America first. Number two, to me, that sounds like a threat from Benjamin Netanyahu. And I want people to keep their eyes and their ears peeled. Notice what he said there. He said that means it next is New York. That means America dead. Da 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 da. So everybody needs to this is my prediction. And we're seeing this intel from former CIA officer Ray McGovern. We're also seeing this from Professor Morandi, just made this announcement earlier on social media. To me, that sounds like a warning from Benjamin Netanyahu. Do not be surprised if we find ourselves in another situation where there is an attack on American soil. Rather, that includes American bases abroad as well, not just here in the United States. And lo and behold, the blame goes on Iran or the Houthis or let's say, Hamas. When indeed it'll most likely probably be Mossad. I'm just giving everybody the heads up about this now. I really do believe that because Israel is receiving so much, backlash from the American people, and because the poll shows the majority of Americans no longer support Israel and more people are becoming anti-war, I really do believe that Israel could do something to strike fear into us, and then the blame will go on Iran. Now, where do I get this from? I don't know. I get it from after 9/11. I get it from, the war in Iraq. Don't forget what they told us, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. That turned out to be a lie. Now, think about all the American troops. Think about all the American troops who died going to fight in Iraq, all the people who lost like family members because of a war that was built on a lie. So where the media and Benjamin Netanyahu and the US government have gone wrong is that they tend to forget that wasn't that long ago. So many of us who are alive now were alive then. And we remember the lie that was told about the war in Iraq. So there's that. The lie that they're trying to spill now is that, well, Iran has nuclear weapons or they're building nuclear weapons. They have been telling us this since I was a kid. I've heard this going all the way back to the 90s. So that's not something that's new. This is something that was coming, from the get-go. It's one of the 7 countries that General Clark revealed on Democracy Now! Back in 2007 that they were told these are the countries that the U.S. is going to go to war with, right? So that's another thing. But the other part about this is, if this is really about keeping America safe, why does the U.S. government have such a close relationship with Saudi Arabia? If we go back to September 11th, don't forget who were flying the planes. They were from Saudi Arabia. They weren't from Yemen. They weren't from Gaza. They weren't from Iran. So if it's really about keeping America safe, why do we have such a close relationship with Saudi Arabia and we consider them to be allies? These are questions that people need to start asking. Like, we really have to open our minds and start thinking for ourselves. And I'm trying to tell you guys, this is about the oil that is in that area. There's a lot of oil that surrounds Iran. So the real reason why the U.S. protects and support Israel it has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with that. It is everything to do with the resources that are in the Middle East. Don't forget that Joe Biden said this a while back. He said, if there wasn't an Israel, we would have created one. That right there lets you know that the U.S. government support for Israel has nothing to do with religion and has everything to do with the resources that are located in the Middle East, which the U.S. still wants to have access to. That's what this is about. And at any point, and here's another thing. All the oil, that's around Iran or whatever, imagine if Iran decided to just turn that off. And I believe it. I believe that Iran, when they say if the U.S. gets involved in this, that they will attack military base, I believe it. I believe it. They're giving you the warning. They're letting you know now. And so Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to scare the American people, and it's not working. The way that this worked during, after September 11, it is not working like that today. And that is why you're starting to see even some of the people who supported Donald Trump are pushing back and are calling him out and are against this. And we're not talking about people like, small influencers. I'm talking about people that have millions of subscribers who have come out vocally against Donald Trump, these actions here with Iran. So this is why I say, and I think Ray McGovern is right. Do not be surprised if they have something, if Mossad or someone has something planned to implement some type of attack, false flag on U.S. soil, and they'll say Iran did it in order to get support for the war.
Yeah. And on top of that, Black Americans, this is our day. So I want to peep game on something. They're more willing to spend billions of dollars to go to a war with Iran than pay the reparations that are owed to us. They're way more itching to go to war with Iran than they are to give a debt that is owed to us. Interesting. They're way more willing to spill the blood of our children that reach the age of 18. They're way more willing to spill the blood of our kids instead of actually giving us true liberation and reparations that we're owed. Doesn't that seem fishy to you? Doesn't that seem out of place? I mean, I'm just saying. On top of it, like Muhammad Ali said, let me ask you this. How has Iran contributed to Jim Crow? Don't worry, I'll wait. How has Iran contributed to, let's just take just a general over everybody, just not even just Black Americans. How has Iran affected our rent? How has Iran affected our food prices? How have they, were they the ones that caused us to have, trillions of dollars in student loan debt? Were they the ones that are denying us healthcare because, we pay into a system and the healthcare companies doesn't pay us back? Were they the ones behind that? What has Iran actually done to us? See, this is the thing. They will paint another people as the boogeyman, and yet, to be honest with you, Benjamin Netanyahu said they shout death to America. I'm like, first of all, even if they said that, I mean, aren't our principles free speech? Why do we care what they say? First of all. Second of all, even if they did, well, maybe if we didn't spend the last 70 plus years, regime changing and messing with their government, then maybe they wouldn't say that. Go back to 1953 and talk to Mohammed Mossadegh.
That part.
So, and here's the thing. Iran keeps getting painted as this backward nation. I'm going to show you how backwards Iran is, because I think this is also important. Iran is so backwards. Look, here's the largest shopping mall in Iran.
Welcome to the largest mall in the world, and it's not where you'd expect. This is the Iran Mall. located in Tehran, Iran. And while many people think the Dubai Mall is the largest in the world, Iran Mall is almost twice the size. At almost 2 million square meters, it has over 7 floors of parking and almost 2,500 stores. And from the very second you walk into this place, it is incredibly extravagant with so much shopping, from Persian rugs to basically anything you can think. And one of the most impressive spots was this grand library that has over 75,000 books. It features lots of traditional Iranian architecture and also blends the modern luxury with the cultural heritage of Iran. And in my multiple hours exploring this place, I didn't even get to see half of what it has to offer, from its ice skating rinks to sports complex to movie theaters. It has it all. And there's even a European area that has the cobblestone streets with plazas and all kinds of European bakeries. But one of the things that really stood out to me is when you go outside of the Iran Mall, they also have a water show like in Dubai, but this one puts the Dubai Mall water show to shame. So as usual, I'm sure you didn't know about this place, especially the fact that it's the largest mall in the entire world. So continue following along to see the other side of Iran that the media doesn't show.
Oh, but they're so backwards. They're just backwards, right?
And Max Blumenthal was just there. He was just there. So he showed people a side of Iran that, they probably have not seen. We also want to mention too, and this is the other part, don't forget that Iran also has a large Jewish population. And see that this is the thing. If it's really about protecting the Jewish people, why are you trying to bomb a country that has, I think it's like the second largest Jewish population after Israel in the Middle East? Why are you trying to bomb? You see what I mean? It's not about that. It's not about that. And they're willing to risk soldiers here. They're willing to risk Americans to make this happen. And what Jaybe and I have been talking about is like the ways that this is going to impact the Black community. Because if the U.S. goes to war with Iran, we're not just talking about them sending troops over there, which predominantly will be Black troops. Like, we are overrepresented in the military, as Red was pointing out. But also, we need to talk about the gas prices. Because if you think that gas is high now, if we were to go to war with Iran, do you have any idea how expensive gas is going to be in the United States? Who do you think that's going to really hit? Think about that for a second. So we're talking about, like, this is not a joke. It's just really not, because you can't be combative against these countries, these nations that have these resources that you so desperately need. So the plan for the US, which Donald Trump trying to play this tap-toe dance, the plan for the United States is basically, and we warned about this, to let Israel come through and take all of that. That is part of the greater Israel project. And because the U.S. is an ally with Israel, if Israel goes in and they take over Iran, just like they've stormed their way into Syria, then the United States won't have to worry about dealing with, okay, well, Iran has this oil. Their ally, their partner, will have access to all of those things. See, this is what it comes down to, folks. It has nothing to do with religion. Religion is what they use as an excuse. So people have to pay attention to that, right? So the U.S. government 100% supports the Greater Israel Project. Now, there was the problem. What they did not anticipate was the backlash that came from us, the American people, during the genocide in Gaza. They didn't anticipate that. They didn't realize that, especially the younger generation, had been woken up to what the creation of Israel really was about. So that threw them off course. So then it's like, we got to try to make it seem like we want a ceasefire to end. But realistically, they don't. They all signed on for this plan, was for Israel to complete this Greater Israel Project. And if they didn't get the backlash, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Jaybe, if they didn't get the backlash from the American people, I think there would be nobody in Gaza right now.
No, there definitely wouldn't be. It's a lot, man. Like, I also want to give attention to one of your tweets that you recently put out. And this also adds to the point. You said Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. Then in 2020, he ordered the assassination of Soleimani. The U.S. and Israel are the aggressors. They've robbed, starved, and killed people in other countries. Israel is the final stage of colonialism. The Bible is the excuse. I just want to, if you can expand upon this a little bit, because the thing is like, are we really willing to fight for nations that rob, starve, and kill people in other countries? Like, they've done that to us. So why would we be willing to fight for another country that does the same?
They convince you, or they've convinced some, that religion is the reason, right? Like the Holy Land, etc. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this tonight when I get to the Ted Cruz and the Tucker Carlson conversation, when they get into Genesis, the Bible, which Ted Cruz didn't even know what book that was from when he gets into that. I think what's important for people to understand is that the Israel that is mentioned in the Bible is not the Israel of today. The Israel in the Bible is not a physical place. This part is important. And, Blakely, I am Blakely on Twitter. She's Christian, she's pro-Palestinian, and she explained this so freaking well, right? There are multiple times throughout the Bible where you describe like what would be a physical being as a spiritual being. So Jaybe and I know this because we grew up in the church. So it's like if you say, I am, the body of Christ, it doesn't mean you're the actual physical body. It's more of like the spiritual thing, right? Mm-hmm. So when Israel is mentioned in the Bible, it is not mentioned as a physical place. Mm-hmm. It is not the modern day Israel, which was created basically because of Zionism. Don't forget, it was the British who gave the mandate that said, this is going to be the place for the Jewish people. But there were already people there. There were Palestinians that were living there, and there were also Jewish people that were living there. They lived side by side. Mm-hmm. What changed that was Zionism. So when Theodore Herzl, who's the father of Zionism, when he pushed forth this movement, the sole plan of Zionism was for them to take over all of that. So what that means is that the Palestinian people were never going to be allowed to stay under the Zionist project. It's a colonial project. So people have to really understand that. Theodore Herzl was not religious. This has nothing to do with religion. Mm-hmm. What they found to be helpful, though, because obviously if you just say, we're going to let people just come in and take this land, is to say, well, it's biblical. And this is important because even there's a lot of pastors who get this wrong. And if you are religious, you go to church and you need to ask your pastor who mentored them, because pastors have mentors. So a lot of pastors also get this wrong. The Israel that is mentioned in the Bible is not the modern day Israel of today. Israel is not discussed as a physical place, an area that has these borders and these boundaries. But what Theodore Herzl was able to do was to take the Bible as an excuse and say, well, this is the Holy Land, so this is where they'll go. And by the way, they were also looking at Uganda as one of the possible countries to send them. So it wasn't just them looking at Palestine. They were also looking at African countries as well. So what a lot of people have been supporting, and not to their own, like a lot of us didn't know this, especially if we grew up in the church, is the final stage of colonialism. Europeans moved all across this country, all across the world, implementing colonialism, colonizing land, people that were already there. We know about this because of the history here in the United States, right? We know about what they did to the indigenous people. So this is not something that's new, but colonialism over time became very much rejected. So this creation of Israel, which was created like 1947, 48, right? So this creation of Israel, you got to think about during the time that this was created. This is not too long before the Civil Rights Movement, right? This is not too long before the Vietnam War. So think about all the things that were going on during that time. So I think it's important for people to understand that when you say you support, and this is what we try to get across to Marianne Williamson. When you say you support the state of Israel, you are supporting a colonial project. That is what you are supporting, because the plan was never for them just to settle right within those borders where they are now. The plan was to consume that entire area. And in order for them to do that, that means that they would have to remove the Palestinian people, which you've seen. That's why they pushed them into Gaza, what became open air prison. That's why they're taking the homes in the West Bank. That's why they've gone into Syria. That's why they want Iran gone too. Benjamin Netanyahu made it very clear and told you Iran is the curse. Iran got to go, right? So they want all of that. And I got news for Saudi Arabia too. When you look at that Greater Israel Project map, part of that includes part of Saudi Arabia. It also includes part of Jordan. So this is not just about Iran, and this is not just about the Iranian regime. This is not just about Hamas. This is a colonial project. Now, that don't sell well when you explain that to people. So what they do is they use religion as the purpose, and they say it's biblical, so this is why we got to do that. So there's a couple of things. Again, people really need to go and read the Bible on their own. And we need to find out where some of these pastors who've been spreading this message to their churches, and that includes the Black churches too, by the way, who mentored these pastors. We need to find that out, because they have been spreading lies to the congregation. And if you've been following this your whole life, like this is what you were taught, like you don't know anything else. So it's hard for some people, especially those who are Christians, it's hard for them to believe, oh my God, I may have been lied to. Second of all, there are different versions of the Bible. How do you know that the King James version of the Bible is the right one? How do you know that? You don't know. Yeah,
because King James was in some bullshit too.
Exactly. People need to start asking questions. There are different versions of the Bible, and everybody believes that their religion is the right one. And this is very key. And this is not to shame people who are religious, but what I am saying is there is a book called the Bible, and then there is the messenger who tells you what the interpretation of those passages actually mean. And what I'm asking you to do is to read it for yourself and use your own interpretation. Because you can go to different churches and you can hear different messages depending on what you're looking for. And sometimes people end up settling at the churches that says the message that they want to hear. And I think you know what I'm talking about, Jaybe. So this is really important, because that is why. And so if they can point and say, but the Bible says, does it? Does the Bible say that? No, the Bible doesn't mention Israel in the physical context.
So, all right, let me take you out to church real quick. All right, because I was an evangelical for almost 20 years. So let's do this. So I shared this on Twitter. Leviticus chapter 19, verses 33 and 34. It says, this is the Mosaic law, which is the law that was given to the Israelites through Moses. It says in Leviticus 19, 33 and 34. If a foreigner resides with you in your land, you must not mistreat him. The foreigner who resides with you should become to you like a native among you, and you must love him as yourself. For you are foreign residents in the land of Egypt. I am Jehovah your God. So basically, right, Israel disobeyed. And according to Galatians chapter 6, verse 8, it says, do not be misled. God is not one to be mocked. For whatever a person is sowing, this he will also reap. That was basically a religious speak for fuck around and find out.
But you can't cherry pick, Jaybe. But see, that tweet you just brought up there is perfect example, because people like to cherry pick the parts that work for their political agenda. And that's the point that me and Jaybe trying to get across with, because according to that passage, you can't have borders. According to that passage, you can't have borders. So see, you can't have it. And this is why I say you can't have it both ways. You can't be picking out verses from the Bible that fit your political agenda, but you ignore the other ones. And there are also multiple passages in the Bible that contradict each other. There's also an Old Testament and a New Testament. So different denominations follow different testaments, right? When I went to the Pentecostal church, they followed the Old Testament. That's why women couldn't wear pants, because they went off of the scripture in Deuteronomy, that says a woman can't wear a man's apparel. So again, which denomination is the right one?
Yeah.
And I just think a lot of people have just been brainwashed into believing that the creation of the state of Israel is biblical, and that's why they need to be there. And who's the who? Because from what I understand, again, if you looking at history, who was Mary? Wasn't Mary Palestinian?
She was Palestinian. She was also a 14-year-old girl that was pregnant.
It's so much things that people really have to look into. And like, one of the things, and this is part of the reason why, I left the Pentecostal churches, because I was asking questions and they didn't like me asking questions. And one of the things my mom always told me is like, we went to Bible study, we went to church on Sunday. Like some of you grew up in the church, but my mom always told me, always make sure, you seek these things out for yourself. Don't just listen to what the pastor say, because a lot of times the pastor don't be living right. But he out there telling you what to do.
Yep. Now, that was from the Torah, right? So according to Judaism, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, right? Now, let's go to the New Testament, because this is also going to set them off, right? So those of you who are Christian, who believe in following Christ, well, this is what the Apostle Paul says to the congregation in Galatia. In Galatians chapter 3, verse 28 and 29, it says, in Christ, there is no difference between Jew and Greek, slave and free person, male and female. You are all the same in Christ Jesus. You belong to Christ, so you are Abraham's descendants. You will inherit all of God's blessings because of the promise God made to Abraham. So that being said, right, it's not actually just a physical inheritance, right? It's talking about more of a spiritual inheritance. By the way, back in 66 CE, when the Romans actually came to destroy the temple in Israel, they actually surrounded the temple, but then they left. They came back with General Titus in 70 CE, and then the temple was destroyed. And once the temple was destroyed, then that's when God said, you know what? We're no longer having a physical Israel. So now it's a spiritual Israel. So by that being said, then why are we trying to rehash something that God said that we weren't going to have anymore? What are you Christians talking about? So now you guys are actually going against God. So Christians are going against Jesus. And then the Zionists who claim to be Jewish are actually going against God in the Torah. So both of y'all who are Zionists are actually going against the words of God. So
there it is.
Actually becoming the Antichrist.
We going to church today because I just think, again, all throughout the Bible, it's made very clear that what is it? Jesus say, come as you are. He accepts everybody. So I just like people have to understand that Lee Camp, if you look up Lee Camp real quick, look at his Twitter, he put out a tweet yesterday about this as well, where he broke down like what Israel means, because that's the thing is like there's a passage in the Bible where it says to Abraham and his kin, I will call you Israel, follower of me. So these are the people who choose to follow Jesus. That doesn't mean this is not a physical place. That is something that Zionism used to continue colonialism and white supremacy.
Yeah.
And it just boggles my mind. Like, again, I think a lot of us, growing up, we believed what we were told and we didn't seek it out further. And so I think if you are criticizing, the Israeli government, and rightfully so. I think you have to take a step further and say, how did this become to be anyway? Because the occupation, the oppression, and all of that happened before Benjamin Netanyahu was prime minister. Those things started happening before then. So removing Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister doesn't change the ideology of the state of Israel. That's what people have to understand. So you need to ask yourself, do you support a settler colonial project? That's what this is.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, are we going to sit here and support a settler colonial project as a stolen people, as descendants of a stolen people? Are we gonna defend that? Because if we do, then karma is a mug. Because what are we doing? And then we're going to spill our blood for supremacists? We wouldn't spill our blood for white nationalists. We wouldn't spill our blood for the KKK. So why are we spilling our blood for Zionists? Does that make sense?
I mean, they literally have Black people backing a supremacist state. Like that's the crazy part. And they sell it with, you are supporting this religion. Okay. Is it even a religious state? No, it's a secular state.
No, yes, secular state.
It's not even a religious state. What are people talking about? So like, just think about this, guys. This is all a lie. And all I ask you to do is just do your own research. And again, like for those of us that grew up in the church, we know what we were taught. But again, you got to seek out the information on your own. It's just like if you go to class, your professor is teaching you, but you also need to learn how to do your own damn research.
Also, like when you do your research, I want you guys to look up how Africans are treated in Israel, especially the Ethiopian Jews. Just like what Angel said, Black and brown people are treated so bad in Israel. Absolutely. Are we really going to fight for a supremacist state that wouldn't even give a rusty nickel for us if we were there?
They're locking like Africans and Palestinians out of bomb shelters in Israel. Do you guys know that?
Yeah. Of course.
That's what Hakeem Jeffries is asking you to support. For the Black viewers. That's what Hakeem Jeffries is asking you to support.
Yeah.
Isn't that insane? And by the way, they know this. All this that me and Jaybe are telling you, they know this stuff. They decided to sell out for a political career and some type of power. They made that decision. They're very well aware. Hakeem Jeffrey comes from a family that they were a little bit more radical. We talked about this before. When we went to the deep dive of Hakeem Jeffries, a little bit more radical, a little bit more, pan-Africanist. Hakeem Jeffries was wearing a dashiki when he was in college. Hakeem Jeffries knows this. They know what we're telling you.
Yeah. Now, let's go into this as well, because I think it's important that we also acknowledge that if we allow ourselves to be part of this, I think we're doing a disservice, not just to ourselves, but also to the ancestors that came before us. We're doing a disservice to our future generations. But I just got to share this. Some people may have some disagreement. Some people may have some agreement. Either way, I think this is necessary to share. But you've had him on your show, and I've had him on my show. This is from Theo Wilson. Let's talk about it.
Out here tweeting reckless, talking about anybody in America could get it, and Black folks on the internet like, yo, my name's Bennett, I ain't in it, I ain't a part of this. As a member of a Black military family, I call bullshit on that. We've been a part of this since the beginning. I'm talking about me personally. Daddy, Vietnam, granddaddy, Tuskegee Airman, other granddaddy, Mumford Marines, great uncle, paratrooper in Korea, great granddaddy, World War I, my personal bloodline is bathed in blood shed by Black hands on behalf of America. When I say the beginning, a lot of Black people like to talk about how, Native Americans, the 5 civilized tribes, owned slaves. And I'm like, what do you think the job of the Buffalo Soldiers was? Let's talk about it. Yeah, these Black men with broad shoulders and these blue uniforms with hair like the buffalo. What you think their job was with the American government in the 1800s after the Civil War? Displacing and dispossession the Cheyenne, Kiowa, and Comanche. That was us. Shedding blood to be a part of the empire. And the same monster that the Indians faced in its infancy, the Middle East now faces in its maturity. And Black folks been a part of it the whole goddamn time. Black hands on American weapons killed Iraqis. Black hands on American weapons killed Afghanis. Black hands piloting American drones killed innocent people in Yemen and Pakistan. And if we should go to war with Iran, Black bodies in American uniforms will be boots on the ground taking their lives too on behalf of the empire again. Talking about we ain't a part of this. What you pay taxes into? Where you buy that gas from? Where you buy your food from? Who's the supply chain keeping food in your baby's bellies? America. As oppressed as we've been, as betrayed as we have been, we are one with the war machine. Sad part is that we've been a part of the poverty draft, which forces us to look at this in a self-centered way. To us, it's a scholarship. To us, it's a pension. But to them, it don't matter to an Iraqi boy if the Black soldier who kicked in the door and killed his daddy was oppressed back home. His daddy dead just the same. Work through your cognitive dissonance. It's hard for us to look at ourselves as a part of an oppressive monster when we ourselves have been oppressed, but two things is true at the same goddamn time. If you Black and serving in the armed forces and don't want this war to happen, you're going to have to get some Muhammad Ali in you. You're going to have to stand up and be like, no Iranian ever called me nigger. But you already know who's going to be the first one in the meat grinder. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq, way more organized and militarily capable. You will be sent to slaughter. Muhammad Ali knew what Black soldiers was going to be doing in Vietnam. And part of the reason why he stood up against it is not only because he didn't himself want to die or he didn't himself want to kill, but he didn't want the karma of being a part of America to be on his hands the way it is on ours. And if you listen to Ali at that time period when he was really with the Nation of Islam, he wasn't just a Black nationalist, he was a Black separatist. And part of the logic of Black separatism at that time was we are going to get whatever karmic comeuppance that America got coming if we are too close to the flames. We instinctively know that that's true. That's why a lot of us freaked out when we heard Iran talking reckless on Twitter. With the way that Benjamin Netanyahu is leading Trump by the nose, talking about Iran was behind your assassination attempts because you killed General Qasem Soleimani back in your first term, I don't see him pumping the brakes anytime soon, which means we got to. Better get some Ali in you. Better look at why he didn't want to do it. You better be able to make that same sacrifice, or more of us will sacrifice our lives and theirs, and more blood for America will be on Black hands. It's just my thoughts. What you think?
So I'll be honest with you. You know what I mean? Let me get your thoughts first.
He's spot on. I mean, that's the thing is like, and like we said, we went over the numbers before, right? Like the military was struggling with recruitment. And so they started to decrease the requirements so that they can get those numbers back up and accepting more women, which have helped them get those numbers back up. But young people, for the most part, are not trying to join the military the way that they were when Jaybe and I were in high school.
No.
Like it's just not. People see what's happening around the world and people don't want to go fight these wars. So that's part of the other thing. But when these things hit, like I said before, you have to think about when America gets a cold, this is the saying, Black people get the flu. Who are they looking to enlist all the time? What schools are they usually going to? They usually target the lower income schools in Black neighborhoods. So, and Theo's right. Black people are going to have to stand up and say, hell to the no. Mm-hmm. Hell to the no. Mm-hmm. I mean, Phil Scott was talking about this the other day, and he was just saying that, like, look, who do you think they're going to try to get to go over there? Black people.
Yep. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to use the tradition. They're going to use our legacy to try to push us to go fight for them. They're gonna be like, well, you had black GIs that fought in World War II. You had black GIs that fought in the Korean War for our freedoms, and the Vietnam War for our freedoms, and Desert Storm for our freedoms. And next thing you know, guess what? People are gonna be like, oh man, well, my father was enlisted, and then my grandfather was enlisted, and now I gotta enlist because I need to follow that tradition. But it's a tradition of what? For whom? Like, who actually benefits? Because when you look at the actual history, it's all for colonialism, for imperialism. It's not the benefit to protect us. It was never about the benefit to protect us. Because if America was so staunch on protecting Black lives, first of all, we wouldn't have a criminal justice system the way it is. Second of all, we wouldn't have the medical disparities that we have. Third of all, we would have gotten, our reparations paid to those of us that are owed it. Fourth of all, we wouldn't have experienced redlining as we have experienced in Jim Crow laws and all these other things. There wouldn't be states that are still denying anti-lynching laws. So therefore, they don't give a damn about our lives here. So therefore, why should we give a damn about making it, expanding the empire over there? It don't make no sense to me. Like, why are we doing this?
We have to, we really got to like educate people more and more about this, like particularly Black people about this, that like Muhammad Ali was correct. There's no reason for you to go over there and fight. And I say this from experience. I come from a military family. I'm very familiar with this. And my family members tell you, if they could do it all over again, they would have chosen a different path. Like not everybody went to war, but still, it's not what you think it is. And what they try to sell you is free college. We'll pay for your college. By the way, there's limitations on that. It's not just we'll just pay for your college. There's a certain tuition amount and certain schools, etc. So there's that. We'll pay for your college, but none of that matters if you're dead. The health insurance was TRICARE health insurance is really good. It's probably the best of the best, aside from obviously like universal health care. There's that. But again, none of that matters if you're dead. They provide housing for your family. They give you, like, you live on base. They give you the military housing. Then there's other perks, like you don't have to put a down payment on a home when you want to buy a home. If you're an active duty soldier, you can get a VA loan, which is $0 down. It's stuff like that. Same thing if you're trying to buy a car. But again, none of these things matter if you're dead. There are a number of people that I know, and I think Jaybe, you know as well, that went to Iraq, that was sent to Iraq. Some came back. One person I know in particular did not come back, and people did not come back the same.
Yeah.
People didn't come back the same from Afghanistan, just like people didn't come back the same from Vietnam. Yeah. That changes your entire life. Your life is never the same after you go over there, in war. It's just not. It's not. We don't, number one, we don't live that way in this country. When we go to sleep at night, we don't hear bombs. You got to think about, like, in the Middle East, how often do they hear bombs? And then they'll tell you about this, like all the fighting over the years and stuff like that. That type of energy, the bombing and all that type of stuff. When you come back to the States, like, this is why you see some of the veterans sleeping out on the street, because they don't know, they can't go back to sleeping in their bed because they've been sleeping outside abroad during these wars. Like, you're never the same. You're never the same after that. So no, you do not have to go fight for your country. No, you don't have to die, especially Black people. No, what has this country still won't even give you what you're owed. So you owe them nothing.
Yeah, of course. And the thing is like I said, the Iranians don't give two shits about us. Like, they just want us to leave them alone. Just leave them alone. If we did that, would there be any threats? If we actually just left the country, if we just closed all the military bases and we left them alone, would there be a threat? Oh, The rats? No, even with us having military bases near there, like they're like, whatever, just leave us alone.
None of these people were thinking about us. None of these
No,
countries were thinking about us. I mean, imagine how would you feel if another country had surrounded the United States with bases? How would you feel
yeah,
about that? Would that make you feel comfortable or would you feel a little tense?
yep,
So think about those things for a second. It doesn't make any damn sense. Why do we have bases all over the world? And
yeah,
if you look through history, most of the time we have been the aggressor, or other countries in the West have been the aggressor most of the time.
mm-hmm. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's crazy on his face when people talk about it. And they say that, oh, we need to go fight for freedom. It's like, it's not fighting for freedom. It's fighting for the big corporations. Like, what have these big corporations actually given us? And this is why I say, if you look, if you're in the military, you better leave. You better get out of there. And the thing is, like, when we're talking about,
because it's not even like, it's not, that's another thing. Like, we say leave the military, but it's not that easy, because the reality is, like, there's a such thing called as going AWOL, which means, like, depending on whether or not you can leave at a certain time. I don't know if it's still the way it used to be, but I know when my dad was in, like, there was a certain number of years or certain time when you could say, okay, that's it, I'm done.
yeah,
I'm just going. But if you just leave, then that can be considered going AWOL, and then they throw you in prison.
yeah,
So there are consequences that come with this. So just keep that in mind. But I don't know, man. Like, I tell you, they get a lot of people young, but not even just out of high school. See, this is another common misconception. I think a lot of people think, well, they're getting a lot of the Black soldiers out of high school. Some of them, yes. Some of them they get out of college. And the way that they get you out of college is they tell you, we're going to pay off your student loans.
mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm going to go back to what you were talking about with the benefits that the military gives, the benefits. Is it worth the PTSD? Is it worth the lost limbs? Is it worth the nightmares? Is it worth potentially, once you get back, the country that you said you were wanted to serve for these benefits, they leave you in the dust and then you wind up homeless anyway? Is it worth it? Is it worth ending the lives of people who, because they said were our enemies, you ended up just killing people who are innocent? Or you're not actually protecting people, you're protecting oil fields. Is it actually worth it? Because who are you really protecting, right? And of course, like, they're going to come up with a false flag. I think it's going to have to be either 9/11 level or bigger than that.
Yep. And they'll blame it on Iran.
Yep.
Or the Houthis or whatever, to get Americans to agree to go to war for Israel. But
Yeah.
I honestly don't think it'll work, JB. Because see, what people got to remember is after 9/11, we didn't have social media.
No. But at the same time,
YouTube either.
No, we didn't. We didn't have YouTube either. At the same time, though, when it comes to something big like that happening, it's going to be the US version of the Hannibal Directive. They're going to risk the lives of American people in order to stoke anger and rage against another people. Because, for instance, after 9/11, which was done by Saudis, did we go to war with Saudi Arabia?
Nope.
We went to war in Afghanistan, in Iraq. By the way, this is kind of funny, going back to the religious part. Abraham came from the city of Ur. The city of Ur is located in modern-day Iraq, meaning the father of all Jewish people is Iraqi. So therefore, when people want to go all the way back, all right, go all the way back. And yet, how many Iraqis were killed, murdered by George W. Bush?
I want to respond to this one as well. Brandslayer said, I was watching the PPD podcast, and they make it seem like the Iranian people are being oppressed and they want regime change and we need to help them. Okay. So let me just call something out here, right? So we know that the Palestinians are being oppressed, but PPD podcasts were totally fine with that oppression and occupation.
Ooh.
Patrick David and his comrades were totally fine with that occupation. Totally fine with that. This is how you can call out, people's bullshit. 2, if the people in Iran want regime change, that is up to them. We have nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. Same thing we said with Libya, right? Like, look what happened to Libya after regime change. Look what happened to Iraq after regime change. Look what happened to all these countries that the U.S. government intervened and implemented regime change. What happened to the people in those countries?
Look, if they want regime change, let them do it themselves. Change your own regime.
This is something even Tulsi Gabbard gets right. Tulsi Gabbard has gotten this right for a long time about regime changes. What happens to the people? The people are worse off in those countries after the regime change than they were before. So people got to think about that, right? Like, it's like they had to get Saddam Hussein out of the way in order to make way for ISIS.
Yeah.
They had to get Gaddafi out of the way because he didn't want to depend on Western dollars anymore. He wanted countries in Africa to be reliant and to do their own thing. They're like, oh no, we got to get you out of there. You got to go. Same thing would happen to all these other countries who say they want to move away from the dollar.
Yep.
The United States, which again, this is a colonial state. The United States have been the aggressor all over the world.
Yeah. So that's why, I played a video, of this 17-year-old who's homeless. I played it, on Tuesday with Eric and Corey when they were on my show. And let me tell you, like, why are we going to, regime change when we can't even get things right here? Like, let's clean up our house first. Right? Let's respect the sovereignty of another people and their self-determination. And let's stop this. And why in the world are we letting a Polish immigrant that lives in occupied Palestine tell us how we should conduct ourselves in our own damn country? Just because he changed his name to Netanyahu. Why are we letting this white man tell us what to do? Black people?
That's a good question.
No.
That's a good question.
He has a bad track record. Because how did we get into Iraq and Iran? Oh, wasn't it that same dude that came to the American government and said, well, we believe that he has weapons of mass destruction. Right? Next thing you know, we ended up in getting into war, over 20 years of war, spilling a lot of black blood over there. All because of Milikowski, Benjamin Milikowski. That's right.
Yep.
His actual name.
Yep. So, and this is why, I think people have to understand, especially those who are still trying to find ways to defend Donald Trump, right? Because they want a savior, and they look at Donald Trump as like, no, you're the new hope. Like, if we're in Star Wars, they look at him as like the new hope, right? And the next president, same thing. Next, other party, you're the new hope. Like, everybody looks at it that way. And reality is, all these people are controlled. The Pentagon is controlled. It's not just the president of the United States. It's all controlled. And by the way, why are we allies with someone who's spending so much time spying on our country? Why are we allies with Israel when intelligence is spying on our country? Israeli intelligence is spying on them. Why are we? Do you spy on your friends?
Oh my gosh. I slept with your girlfriend because she was lonely. Jesus Christ. That's why I don't. This is why we need to just like leave. Like, number one, we need to leave duopoly. Number one. Number two, these actions that are taken against another people that are, you know, being oppressed by our government, by the West, like we need no part of that.
I believe when it comes to these wars that the American people should be able to vote on this the same way we vote on ballot measures, because I feel like, especially when it's something where you're going to send American troops there, I think that we should be able to vote on those types of things as a country and not just rely on Congress. Congress is bought and paid for. So you can't rely on them to do what the constituents like want. And that's the thing, is like we really don't have that voice. You have a couple of Congress members who speak out against these wars, but even Bernie Sanders, he keeps saying Netanyahu's war, Netanyahu's thing. No, this is Israel's war. Just like Gaza is Israel's genocide and occupation. So he can't even go as far as to say that what Israel is and what it has become is a problem. And I'd argued this before. If Israel wasn't there, you wouldn't have the tensions that you have in the Middle East. You wouldn't have it. It's that place in particular that wants all the other people gone. In Saudi Arabia, you guys can stand up there and clap right now and just be like, you know, gung-ho with Donald Trump if you want to, but they're going to be coming for you too. They want all of you gone. All of you gone. Colonialism isn't, let me just take this little piece of land and I'll just be here. Colonialism always includes expansion. Even when Europeans came to North America, did they just stay on the East Coast? No, they expanded.
Yep. So, Sabs, what is your final word to Black people in regards to on this Juneteenth of what should we do in regards to a possible world war between Israel and Iran?
Don't go fight for this country, that's for sure. Don't go fight for this country. This country don't care about you. Like, don't go fight for this country. I don't give a damn who the president is. Do not go fight for this country. You don't owe this country anything.
Yep. I'm gonna leave you with the last word on that. Sabs, just to let you, just to ask before we get into the super chats and everything, what do you have going on this evening?
All right. So we're covering 4 news stories, and Scott Ritter is also coming on to talk about the recent actions from Donald Trump and, you know, where this could all be heading. So I'm curious to hear his perspective about, from a military perspective. I'm interested to hear what he has to say. Okay.
Man, you've been burning midnight oil. Professor Morandi and Scott Ritter and woo!
Look,
Abby's on fire.
It's been a lot of, I know it's been a lot of it's so much going on the past couple of weeks. Like I was telling people, I was like, I haven't had a lot of sleep over the past like week and a half, just because of like once the news with the war broke, like we haven't, you know.
Yeah, it's been a lot of news over the last few days, and I'm just saying, like, between you, me, Nick, and Rome, it's been a lot of talking about this. So I think, you know, I'm glad that we were able to cover this at, you know, from a different perspective, because I think it's very important that we get into that, especially from the Black perspective as well. So while we're at it, let's get into some of the comments in the chat. I'm going to do the super chats first, and then if we have any time remaining, then we'll get into the rest. But for the most part, we have to do this. So actually, let me check the Rockfin chat really quick first. Yep, we got Rockfin chats. And unfortunately, I'm only going to be able to read the tip chats. I'm sorry, for the sake of time. Then, that's all I have time for. All right, so let's share the screen. All right. So happy Juneteenth to you, Dave Burt. Thank you very much for the tip. Thanks, Jaybe and Sabs. Thank you very much for that, Dave. Roger says, fine. So rename Antarctica Israel. Rename Antarctica Israel. Move the Zionists there. Increase climate change, and we all can sit back, watch, and celebrate as we watch them fall into the sea. One and done. Oh, Roger. Next. Opinions on this one regards to the reviving of the Bible by Zios guys. Jaybe DM regarding enlistment, also other side of it, also poll for Sab. So I'm not going to be able to read. Yeah, that's a video. Then we don't really have time. Sorry, Roger. But I'll take a look at it afterwards. And I can share it in the chat. But where am I? Okay. And then all right, yeah. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate the tips and everything on the Rockfin. Let's go to, let me check to see if we have any Rumble rants. Let me see. Rumble. Okay, we're good on the Rumble rants. All right. So we're good there. And now let's get into the comments in chat. Pitchforks are coming. Been a member for 27 months. Clap it up for Pitchforks are coming. Thank you. He said, you tried both evils for decades. Now vote green. All right. We go. Wandy says, awesome education despite me not being religious. Thank you very much. Jasmine coming in saying, so wish we were doing a call-in.
Oh.
Yeah, that might have been interesting. Just Trash says, do either of y'all know about Rastafari Zionism? No, I do not.
No, I don't. I'll have to look into that.
No, but if it's connected to Zionism, do I want to know? Wadi said, well, damn. I heard that in Sabby's voice. And then Roger, oh Lord, Roger said, stop lying. You ain't sleep with no one's girlfriend. I'm not going to say what I was going to say, Roger, but okay. So, yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have time for the other chats, but I appreciate everybody for joining in. Sabs, thank you so very much for this great conversation. We're going to head on out, guys. Look, if you guys have not, please go ahead and make sure to like and subscribe on your way out. And we will see all of you on the Sabby Sabs in 90 minutes from now. So, any last words, Sabs?
Smoke them if you got them.
Happy Juneteenth, everybody. Have a great night.